Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. No special announcements or anything, so let's jump right into it. Jasens Customs is doing one final run of the CPS3 metal enclosures for the CPS3 arcade platform. The price is $150 with $20 shipping worldwide, and that's a pretty cheap shipping cost because metal is not light and shipping costs have gone through the roof recently, so it's very fair for shipping. So you're looking at $170 for this, and these cases have always been really high quality and really well done, so it's definitely a great option if you have a CPS3 arcade platform and you want another option as a shell, because I believe there's at least one other out there, and all are great. It's just all down to a matter of preference. Now, Jasens Customs, once again, isn't reopening. I think Jason was just wanted to do one more final run to get them out. And these are all going to also have the cutouts for HDMI ports and everything. So if you want to use the CPS digital on it, you'll easily be able to integrate that as well. Basically, I think Jason just wanted to do one final fully loaded run of these cases. And Jason's also been open sourcing his designs through Buy Me a Coffee. So basically, if you want to just contribute plus be able to use the designs, please consider donating to the Buy Me a Coffee. It's kind of like tipping or Patreon, but only a one payment type of thing. So if you're not familiar with that, it's basically just like a nice way to tip somebody if you're a fan of their work. And these designs are very cool. So it's great that that Jason's open sourcing them and giving anybody with the ability to cut metal the ability to make one of these. And that, of course, isn't an easy thing, but if you happen to work in a metal shop or, which I actually know quite a few friends who do, this might be a pretty neat thing to make for yourself if you would like to. So if you have a CPS3 and you were looking to pick up one of these, now's probably the time because this is the last official run. And while there are other choices, and you could obviously have your own made, it is cool to support the original developer if you do want one of these. The classic adventure game Myst was recently released and then re-released on different VR platforms. It was released on the Oculus Quest platform about a year ago, and it just in the past month or so has been re-released on Steam, Epic Game Store, Good Old Games, and Xbox Game Pass, although no VR on the Xbox version. And overall, it was a complete remake done from the ground up using the Unreal Engine 4, and it's been done with VR in mind, which, if anybody remembers that growing up, I was still pretty young, but it was pretty awesome to go and have all those scenes where you click and you walk. I'm using the word walk loosely, of course, but you walk up the staircase and you're looking out the window, and it's just such a weird and spooky environment to immerse yourself in. So I imagine with VR it would really take that to the next level, or not. I haven't had a chance to try it yet, but it seems very, very intriguing. So in the post here, Chris posted some side-by-side comparisons of one of the, not the original, but one of the fluffed up versions that has 24-bit color instead of the original 256-bit, but basically the best version of the original versus the new one. And there's a lot of extra details and a lot of things that make it seem very, very cool. And even the things that don't really matter for gameplay, like how nice the water flows in the clouds. It's rare that you would get a game that would add to it. It kind of almost does in this, because if it sets the scene a little bit better and kind of sets the mood, it would kind of add to the whole experience of it. So overall, it just seems like if you have a VR platform and you want to try something like this, it seems like the perfect game for it. There are some neat things, like you could access the original FMVs if you want, or the new CG rendered versions of it. It's really just a matter of preference, but overall it seems very cool. So if you're into VR and you're into Myst, this seems like an absolute no-brainer to give a try. And I still have that HP one. I lent it to a friend. Somebody lent it to me. I lent it to another friend, and now it's sitting over there in a box. So one day, relatively soon, I will revisit that. And at the moment, the only game for VR that I loved was a table tennis game that you could play with friends online. And that was awesome. I was just terrified of smashing stuff in my apartment because I barely had enough room to stick both my arms out. So now at least I have a spot where I could just, as long as I clear off the table, I could absolutely swing my arms around and not hit anything important. So I'm looking forward to getting back into VR, but I have been a little bit picky in the experience because a lot of that stuff makes me motion sick, and I'm pretty sure it's the low frame rate, the low refresh rate, and some games that they're just trying their best to figure out how to do it, but it's a huge learning curve. So I keep going back to it. I keep going back with an open mind and trying again. And I have found at least one game that I really liked. So I'm sure there's going to be a bunch more. And who knows, maybe Myst will be one of them. Mateus Baez has just released a short but very cool video that describes how the 32X CD works. First of all, as always, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I never intend to pronounce them wrong. I'm just really bad at it. But anyway, so it's not a very long video, which actually makes it very appealing to a lot more people. So many of us that are in a rush don't often have time to sit down for a deep dive. So this is like a 4-minute video or something that's just the basic technical overview of how the 32X works, and then specifically how the 32X CD works. And it sheds a little bit of light as to why you really only saw FMVs on the platform and not anything else. Anybody that knows the history of Sega and what happened probably already knows that the 32X was, you know, a haphazardly made band-aid to try to fill time between platforms, and unfortunately everything about it kind of stunk, except some of the games. But the way it was built was very poorly built. You know, the compatibility was weird. I still have stock Genesis consoles that won't work with 32Xs and some that will, even with that side adapter and all that other stuff. And the CD games of it were always lacking. And there were some weird issues too. Like, I distinctively remember testing, because Tianfong suggested I test Fahrenheit on both the Sega CD and the 32X CD, and the 32X CD was significantly worse audio. So there's always some weird caveats to that, but hey, it's got an interesting version of Night Trap. I guess you could give it that. But overall, if you're curious about the nerd side of things, definitely give the short video a watch, because it sheds some light on how it works. And I'm always into all these like how it works type of stuff. So it was an interesting video. Pre-orders are now open for a physical copy of the Game Gear game Heroes Against Demons, and there's quite a bit you should probably know before getting into this. All of it's positive, by the way, but it was a tiny bit confusing at first, so I just wanted to spell it out for everybody. First, the game was originally created for the SMS Power coding competition in 2020, and it was originally made for the Sega Master System. And if you want to try out what the game is like, or even purchase the Master System version, both are available. You can get the ROM for free. You could test it out on emulation, ROM cards, Mister, whatever you got. So you could certainly get a sense if the game is something that you would like at all. And if you're an SMS fan, a complete in-box version of that is available for $60 through all the same store. But the developer behind this also went above and beyond to do a Game Gear version with some cool features. Overall, the game's pretty much the same, which is why I suggest playing the SMS ROM of it, which is freely available, just to see if it's your kind of game. But the Game Gear version has link cable support for 2 players, which is always neat, in my opinion, at least for the Game Gear, because I never really did that as a kid. So many more people were doing the 2-player Game Boys, but even that wasn't a big thing where I lived. I'm sure it's all different depending where you lived, how many kids had Game Boys and stuff like that, or Game Gears or whatever. But the complete in-box versions are pretty interesting. There's 2 versions available. One just standard complete in-box with a manual, color, all color box and all that stuff, and that's going to be $70. But there's also a collector's edition, and only 50 are being made, that comes with a custom Game Gear shell, which is what I'm showing in the picture for anybody watching on video. So it's not only just the shell, but the glass screen and the buttons, and they're all high quality versions of it. So if you love the game and your Game Gear case was ratty and old and you wanted to upgrade it, this is actually a pretty neat thing. If you didn't, you know, obviously this isn't for you, but I mean that respectfully. So overall, you basically have a whole bunch of different ways to play or try out this game if you want. The only thing you don't have is a way to purchase just the ROM of the Game Gear version. Now, of course, you could always play the SMS version via a ROM cart on the Game Gear if you wanted to, but that's just one thing that I always like to see, and it's obviously up to any developer how they want to do it. This developer offers the SMS version for free, so they're not like hiding anything from the community or anything like that, but I just know a lot of us, including myself very often, want to support developers for the games that I like, but I don't always want a complete in-box copy. Now that I have a little extra space to put stuff in, I'll probably start picking up more of things like that, but very often I just want to enjoy the game and give back to the developers who take the time to make that for us. So who knows, maybe after the collector's edition sells out or something, the developer would consider offering just a ROM version, or like a lot of people do where they have that name your own price, which is really handy because I very often will buy a game and then can't find the digital copy, and I could either spend 5 minutes looking through my hard drive or my network drive for them, or I could just go back to the website and give 0 and not feel guilty because I already bought the game. So who knows? It's up to them. No problem if they don't, because there's SMS version still available for anybody that wants to play it. But if you're in the mood to try out a new puzzle game, I would at least download the SMS ROM and give it a try and see if the complete in-box version or the collector's edition version of the Game Gear game is something that you would want to purchase. A new Castlevania game was just released on Apple Arcade. The title of the game is Grimoire of Souls, and it's a modern graphic 2D platformer, which is a style of game I really like because it takes advantage of the beautiful new graphics that modern platforms can handle, but it's still the old school 2D side-scrolling style that I just enjoy playing. It's not really nostalgia based, it's just the type of game I really like. So it seems like a great Castlevania game, although I'm not quite sure if it's more of the older style where it's a platformer or if it's the newer style where it's more of like a Metroidvania. I did get the game and I loaded it up to make sure it worked, but I haven't had time to get any farther past that yet. So I'm looking forward to at least giving this a try, and if you have Apple Arcade, I suggest you give it a try as well, because it is free if you already have Apple Arcade. I do have some thoughts on that, though. So, first of all, this game was originally released in 2019 on smartphones via iOS and Android, and then it was pulled about a year later, and I'm not sure if they ever gave any explanation as to why, but it was basically only available on mobile platforms, and now it's an Apple Arcade exclusive, and you could even play it with Apple TV on a big television using a controller, which I think is a really good thing. And the exclusivity to Apple Arcade isn't surprising because exclusive games have been a thing since the dawn of video games, but Apple Arcade is a subscription service. So there's a good and a bad side to this. The good side is if you already have Apple Arcade, you could just try it for free. Or if you don't, you could get a free, I think it's a free either 7-day or 1-month trial. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you could get a free trial to try this and other Apple Arcade games out, which is awesome and fair. But that's kind of where I start to have a bit of a negative opinion of this. Because what if this is a game that I just really like and I want to keep? Now, as soon as it's removed from Apple Arcade, it's gone forever. And on the other side of things, sometimes I just get really busy and I start a game and then I don't pick it up again for a month or two. So that free trial, it doesn't really help me at all. I actually have the same opinion about a lot of stuff, like regular software that has free trials. I can't tell you how many times I've loaded up a new piece of software, started to learn it, and gone, all right, I don't have enough time for this, I'll come back later. And by the time I get back to it, the trial's over and I don't even have the opportunity to learn the software anyway, so I just don't use it. And I kind of feel like that might be what happens with this, because I'm still pretty busy with everything, so I don't really like subscription models for stuff like this. There are some cases where I think it's awesome. I believe PlayStation has their subscription model where you could still buy the game, you could still buy a hard copy, or you could use their subscription. That's cool because you have choices, but the fact that we don't have a choice is kind of annoying. So I didn't mean to talk too much about that. I just wanted to bring it up just because I know a lot of other people are frustrated with how digital games are being distributed. But I also just wanted to warn everybody, like, if you already plan on keeping Apple Arcade, just don't worry about it. Play it when you can, or, on the sooner side in case it gets pulled again. But if you do want to give it a try, it's just something you have to keep in mind. Set some time aside for it. And the only other thing I would suggest is get a good controller, because I think universally everybody would agree who plays video games, if you don't have a good controller, it's going to ruin the experience. And I picked up an Xbox Series X controller last year, and that was a bit of a nightmare too, because I bought it hearing that the Apple TV platform was going to support it, and then it didn't officially support it for months. And then the entire reason I bought the controller was to play Bloodstained. So when it finally did support it, I went to get Bloodstained and realized it's mobile only. You couldn't play it on Apple TV. So it was just kind of a nightmare. I hope this doesn't end up this way. The only other question I have is, what's the lag like? I have never had a chance to test any kind of controller through Apple TV on the whatever TV you're using. Obviously, your TV is going to add its own lag, but how does it compare to other platforms? Is it the same? Does it matter with the controller a lot? Which, of course, each controller is going to be different, but is there a giant difference between them? And I just don't have the answers to any of that, and I would like to set some time aside to do some research at some point. I'll get like one of those zero lag monitors or 1 millisecond gaming monitors, connect everything up, and I'll use my slow motion camera to figure that stuff out. But it is a question that's worth asking because nobody in the industry seems to really talk about this. I would really love to see Xbox or somebody pick a console. I'm not trying to take sides here. Pick a console, stand up and say, hey, the new version of the most popular fighting game just came out and it's, 4 frames faster on our platform because we care about lag. Like, I wish somebody would do that. And, I doubt that's going to be Apple, but I would like to know the answer either way. So anyway, that was a very long-winded way of saying there's a new Castlevania game on Apple Arcade. If you like that platform, cool. If you don't, we're all kind of out of luck, and who knows if it's laggy or not. Next up is the first post from Nicole Brannigan, aka Nicole Express. I've been a fan of Nicole ever since Smoke Monster showed me Space Ava, and then we ended up doing the playthrough video, and I've basically been following her Patreon account and all of her posts ever since, and was really thrilled when she agreed to post some of those up on RetroRGB, because a lot of the posts are very technical in detail, and things that a lot of my fellow nerds would really get into. And then there's other stuff like this post today, which paired the Pioneer LaserActive and the RetroTINK 5X. And Nicole gave her opinions based on, her development background and her eye for detail on a lot of the different games that she's been playing, and found that the RetroTINK 5X did a really great job with the LaserActive's composite video output, and in fact even was able to reproduce the colors properly, which the RetroTINK 2X and even the FrameMeister get wrong sometimes. So that was pretty cool to see. She also was able to do a comb filter comparison because it seems like the LaserActive outputs composite video slightly different than original Genesis consoles, and also did an analysis of what FMV games and different Laserdiscs themselves look like, which is something that I haven't had time to get into. I've said this every week since, for like 2 months now, but I really wanted to start testing scan lines on movies and TV, and I want to make sure to do both really noisy old TV shows that were shot 480i, old movies, and even newer movies, just to see what it's like, because I definitely find that using a CRT or a projector tricks your brain into thinking that some of the noise that you might see is either just, the flicker of a projector, or the noise might blend really well with the CRT's mask. And when I was doing those tests before with scan lines, it kind of just looked like it was an over-sharp image with horizontal lines going across. So now that the RetroTINK 5X has different filters like the aperture grill and the slot mask based ones, I wanted to try and see how it looked, and Nicole had mixed feelings about that as well. I guess she had better luck with it in higher resolutions, but that will definitely change based on what type of TV you have, how big the TV is, and how far away you sit from the TV. So overall, if you wanted to hear some pretty cool thoughts on how Laserdiscs and the Pioneer LaserActive console would work with the RetroTINK 5X, definitely give Nicole's post a read, and I'm definitely interested and looking forward to reading some more of her cool stuff on the website. And speaking of the RetroTINK 5X, Mike Chi has posted another firmware update. There was actually 2 updates since the last time we posted on the site about it. I'm sorry, I completely missed the other one. It's totally not like me, but this one is heavily focused on PAL stuff, and it has some bug fixes, as does the other one. So if you own a RetroTINK 5X, download the latest firmware from the main link, and that's the main firmware link, so that will never be an old thing to click on. It'll always give you the newest one on top. If you want info on how to update your RetroTINK 5X, please check out the video. And the video is longer than it takes to update the firmware. So definitely watch it once and maybe skim it a second time if you need a refresher. But I really just wanted to make it overly detailed so that people wouldn't have any mistakes or any questions on there or something. So overall, I would just get the newest firmware anyway. But here's the features that are focused on this one. And I think the number one thing that stood out to me was the ability to fill the screen with PAL games. So this is kind of an interesting conversation that goes a lot deeper than my knowledge of it. So I'm going to give a basic overview and be kind if I get it wrong. Definitely correct me in the comments. Feel free to make fun of me, but I'm not like intentionally doing this wrong. I'm trying my best here. But I believe some games that were ported over to PAL consoles didn't really get a full conversion. They basically were just, shoehorned in to work on it, and that was it. And one of the things that happens when games are made like that is the aspect ratio is kind of wrong, and you end up with black bars on the top and bottom of the image. But I believe this would have happened on PAL CRTs anyway. It's not something that would only happen with the RetroTINK. I think it's just a bad conversion in the game. So if you set the console, or if you set the RetroTINK 5X to 1080p fill when you have a 50 Hz source, a PAL source, it'll look pretty much the way it looks on a PAL CRT. But if you set it to 1080p over, it'll scale the image to look the proper aspect ratio that the game was designed in. Now, of course, this brings up the debate. If you grew up playing this game on a PAL CRT, what's the right way to play it? The way that you remember it, or the way that the original NTSC version was designed? And obviously, there's no answer to that. It's whatever's right to you. And the other point that I wanted to make that I made in the post here is that the only feature on the RetroTINK 5X that affects lag at all is frame lock versus triple buffer. And if you want more info on that, please check out my deep dive video on the RetroTINK. But that means that you could just feel free to try all of these different features with scan lines on or not, whatever resolution you want, and it really won't make any difference in lag. If you want to nitpick, I have seen TVs have about a millisecond difference in lag between resolutions if you're not running it native, but unless it's progressive versus interlaced, it's all real world the same. You could add your measurements to it, but it's not going to make any real world playing difference. So if you have PAL consoles, definitely get this firmware, and I would just try it and see however you like it anyway. I always preferred 1080p over the 5X mode for all of the reasons that I went through in that video that I did. If you don't know what I'm talking about, definitely give that one a watch, because if you own an OSSC or a RetroTINK 5X or any of the other scalers coming out, that's going to be completely relevant to how you play games. And in so many cases, I found that 1080p 5X, or over as it's called, and the TINK 5X is the better way to play, even if your TV supports the higher resolutions. So I strongly recommend giving that one a watch just to give a basic idea of it. The full list of changes for both this firmware and the one that we missed are both in the post here, so my apologies. I'll try to stay up with all of these things. But basically, there's also optimal timings, some bug fixes, and the aperture grill scanline option was reverted to the original, because I guess there was another update that came that kind of changed it a little bit, and I definitely didn't like the newer one and how it looked on my TV. I think other people may have, so I think there's just more options now, which is always a good thing. So, and of course, there's more bug fixes and other tweaks, like a low pass filter for EDTV, meaning 480p, is separate from the standard def ones, and that would help depending on your source and depending on what you're feeding it. And there was just some more fixes and tweaks. So as always, I would just say get the latest firmware, try all the new features, and unlike a lot of other devices, you could always go back to the older firmwares. So if for whatever reason you load this one up and you don't like something, you just go back to the way it was before using the same link, just scroll down and get the older firmware, and just that's it. And the only other last thing to remind everybody, I put it in the video, I talk about it, but a lot of people seem to forget, when you're updating the RetroTINK 5X's firmware, Once you hit update, just don't touch your computer for the minute and a half that it takes, because it'll probably say not responding. The window will probably freeze, and it's very natural to go, uh-oh, what happened? Just let it finish. That's a bug in the software, and it's my very, very strong opinion that the firmware update itself works perfect, so Mike shouldn't be wasting his time on a software bug that doesn't do anything other than, accidentally say not responding when it is responding. I'd much rather have Mike spend his time doing all the stuff he has been doing rather than work on a bug that just doesn't matter at all. So if you see not responding, just don't touch it. Give it a full 2 minutes, and everything should end up fine. So here's something incredibly embarrassing but kind of fun at the same time. I've never played a Pokemon game. I don't know why. I think they were released just about the time in my childhood where other things started to become a little bit more important, and then when I swung back around to video games a few years later, I just kind of skipped over it. So I wanted to play them live on stream for the first time, just for fun, just because, I'm sure it's very easy to laugh at somebody who's stumbling through something that they should probably know about. And I wanted to do it with somebody who's a Pokemon expert. So I asked RetroAllie to join me, and we played a couple. I wanted to start in sort of chronological order. So we went through a few of the Game Boy games and a Game Boy Advance game, and kind of just checked out what it was like to play the game. And here's where it gets weird. Allie was awesome. I think she was by far the best part of the stream. Really entertaining listening to her, and especially hearing her talk about the games, and how they work and how they pertain to the anime and stuff like that. So if you're a fan of the games, Allie was definitely great. But I didn't really know what Pokemon was, and I, for some crazy reason, confused it with the Kirby games. So I went into this thinking I was going to be playing like a kind of neat side-scrolling Game Boy game, and it's actually a JRPG, which I just don't like. And once again, I'm not insulting anybody who likes those games. I'm not like trying to say one's better than the other, but it's just like music, right? There's just a preference. There's no right answer. And those aren't my favorite games, and I generally just don't really like any of them. So I was shocked and embarrassed when I realized, like, wait, they're all JRPGs? There isn't... What was that side-scrolling game I played once? And I think I confused Kirby for Pikachu or something like that. I don't even really know what happened. So it wasn't a very long stream. We kind of just played through everything. From the nerd side of stuff, it was really interesting to once again see Woozle's Game Boy Advance Consolizer be able to play this, and how the first game that we played had pretty bad vertical screen tearing, but the others didn't. And it's not the Consolizer. That's kind of part of the game, and I've seen a bunch of Game Boy games that were made that way, and I actually just think it's because the screens were so bad on the original Game Boys that you might not have ever noticed anyway, so the developers probably were just like, let's spend our time on other stuff. But yeah, so highly recommend, if you like Pokemon or anything kind of like that, checking out Allie's Twitch account. She's got a Patreon as well, which, as always, as I say with everybody, if you're a fan of somebody's work and you have the ability to donate, please do, or at least spread the word to people who do. So if you want to check it out or leave it on in the background, there's a whole lot of laughing at me, which I'm always okay with, by the way, especially when it's good-spirited like this. But yeah, basically you'd be listening to a moron play the wrong game while somebody who's very well versed in the subject explains it all to me like the child that I was. So my bad for anybody that watched. I hope it was at least funny. But it was very interesting to see, because I did finally get to put a face to the name, if you will, because I've heard the name of these characters. I've kind of seen pictures and screenshots of the game, so it was kind of cool to understand what it is. But very respectfully, that's the only time I'm going to be playing them. Just not my thing. So no disrespect. I just don't really like that type of game. So yeah, I'll leave it up to you if you think that was a stupid live stream or not. But once again, at the very least, Allie was awesome. So thank you very much to RetroAllie, and at least check her stuff out, even if you skip my embarrassing stupidity of thinking I was playing a different game. Before I go, I want to talk a little bit about multi-out adapters for classic consoles, because some of them are awesome and totally do their job right, and some of them are terrible and could do some serious damage. And I'm specifically bringing this up because I saw a few were released in the past week or so that could be completely and totally fine or not, and I just don't have enough info about them, which is why I don't want to link to them or show a picture, because I don't want to be disrespectful if these turn out to be awesome pieces of equipment, but it at least did make me want to start the conversation of what to look for and why you might want to look for these things if you want to do this at all. And I guess why you would want a multi-out adapter. And why you would want one is very simple. You might want to take a GameCube's output and turn it into a Super Nintendo's output. Or you might want to take some kind of breakout box to take all of the signals that a multi-out offers and break them out into their own individual connectors. I believe Jacob made me one of those a few years ago for the Super Nintendo that allowed me to do a very awesome demo, which I brought with me to all the live expos that I went to show different comparisons. There's just a whole bunch of different reasons why you might want one of these that to you might seem, oh, this is amazing. And to somebody else might seem, well, that's dumb. Why don't you just plug a cable into it? And both of those are perfectly fine answers, all depending upon your scenario of which you're trying to use it. And there's a few things that you need to worry about. First of all, poorly made anything is going to never be a good idea. So if you have a poorly made connector without a beveled edge, because once again, like on the Super Nintendo, for example, just like with cartridges, if you're sliding a PCB between a set of pins, it needs to be beveled. Otherwise, you're going to smash those pins on the inside of it. Not all consoles would be like that. So the round connectors wouldn't have them. The rectangular probably would. And of course, are they the right thickness? If it's too thick, you could do damage to the console. If it's too thin, you're not going to have the right connection. And then the one obvious one that anybody could look at just by looking, or anybody could tell just by looking at, is what about any kind of pressure or bracing support for it? So if you plug in something that's kind of big and heavy, and then you plug a big and heavy cable into it, and it's anchoring down on the multi-out, now you're going to be, you could snap anything that's in there. You could put a lot of pressure on one side versus the other. It's pretty obviously not a good thing to put levered pressure on something like that. So is there some kind of standoff or brace to make sure that there's support, or is it just kind of hanging there putting pressure on the inside? And then the other thing that you have to worry about, especially with consoles that have components in the cables, which is most of them on the RGB side of things, is how is the circuit on the board itself that's inside this multi-out breakout board made? So if you have a scenario like let's just say the Sega Genesis that requires on the RGB lines resistors and capacitors, and absolutely requires it on the sync line, but doesn't on the composite video line, how is that handled? Are you breaking RGBS out to a D-sub, so a VGA style connector, without the right components on it? Then you're sending high voltage down a VGA connector to whatever your target device is, which is very bad. On the flip side of things, if you only need capacitors, that's something that you might not notice right away, if at all. So if you took that, let's Sega Genesis multi-out to VGA adapter, D-sub I should say, because it's not doubling the signal, and you plugged it into an RGB monitor, the signal would be bright and blown out, and you'd know immediately, all right, something's wrong. But what about a Super Nintendo that requires capacitors, but not resistors? You could plug that into your TV and go, oh, looks fine, should be okay then. And it's not really the right way to do it, especially anything on the sync line, because you can't see a difference if there's too much voltage going down the sync line. Also for any of the breakout boards. So you connect the multi-out connector into it, and then it breaks it out to a board with all of the different connections, like what Jacob made for me. I'm pretty sure that was Jacob. I'm so sorry if I was thinking of somebody else there. But what console are you using it on, and can you use all of the outputs at the same time? And in the case of a Super Nintendo, yeah, you, especially a later Model 1 chip with an RGB mod built into it, so a bypass, it's totally safe to use S-Video, composite video, and RGB all at the same time. Whereas older models of the Super Nintendo, I have no clue. Other consoles, maybe. Ones with the CXA chip should, like a Genesis, but ones without, you don't know. You would have to check each board revision. There would have to be some kind of database, made for it. Whereas if you're using that breakout board that has all of the connections on it, but you're only using one video out at a time, then that would never matter anyway. So once again, I'm not trying to say any of the breakout adapters that were released are bad. I don't know. There's just not enough info on the pages from the people that released them, which I guess is a little bit of an insult. Sorry, I got to call it like I see it. You should have this information whenever you release something like that. Closed source, open source, whatever. It is safety related. But they could be completely fine. They could be excellent, made with the best quality components and the perfect circuits on it. But I just don't know. And I saw it start to gain a little traction on social media. And I just wanted to, as always, try to educate and put the word out there as to what to look for and what not to look for. And for the record, there's been a few people in the retro gaming scene who have started and not completed a multi-out breakout project for all of the reasons I just said. Is it anchoring down and putting too much pressure? Is there some kind of standoff or brace to take pressure away? What about the quality of the signals going down? If the board isn't routed right, or if the board's too long, or if you use a breakout cable, it's the same as using an unshielded cable. So while that's not a safety issue, you could get buzz on your audio and you could get jail bars on all of your video lines, especially with blue. So there's a lot of things that are involved in making a very good multi-out breakout connector. And just like everything else, there's also a lot involved in making one versus manufacturing a large amount to ship to people. It's relatively speaking, very easy to hand make something and take your time, and takes 2 hours, but you have everything perfect. Yeah, try making 100 of those. Something's going to happen. You have to make them differently. You have to compromise somewhere. And sometimes it's fine. Other times it's not. So I just, while it might sound like I'm rambling to people who have never had issues like this before, if you've ever had to replace a multi-out connector on your console because of misuse like this, or, I really hope no one's shorted anything out because of a poorly made PCB that plugs into the multi-out. But if you have, then you're really hurting right now as I'm talking, because you know that it could have been avoided if somebody like me could have warned you in the beginning, because very often the people making these things just genuinely don't know that there could be a problem. And that's not an insult at all. That's, I'm just saying, like, there's tons of stuff I did when I started out RetroRGB that I wrote info on a page that was just wrong because I had no idea how to test it and how to verify it. And as I did, I obviously changed over the years and tried my best to fix all of that stuff. So if you're looking to get a multi-out breakout, use them with caution. And if there's ever if any of the projects that have been in works for 6 years now ever actually get finished and get released, you'll know, because I'll make a huge deal about it, because it's something that I've wanted for so many really good reasons. And once again, it's not for everybody. If you just play with composite on a CRT, if you just have RGB go into your scaler, you don't need any of this stuff at all. But there's a whole bunch of us that probably do. So if one that's verified, high quality, high quantity too is ever released, I'm going to make a very big deal, not even caring that the video might only get 500 views, because the 500 people that watch it will probably buy it. So sorry for my rambling, but I just always try to steer people in the right direction. And to repeat myself one last time, I might actually be steering you right towards the ones that were just released. Maybe they're awesome, but it's really good to know what you're buying before you buy it, especially when it could do some damage. Well, that's it for this week. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially to anybody who supports on any of the support services, because it's you who's keeping the website, the insane amount of behind-the-scenes research, the podcasts, and everything else alive. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you next week.